One thing I like to say, especially when we have speakers and in a living room setting, is come close. The stage feels so far away sometimes, and it's really nice for our presenters to have a more intimate connection with the audience. So come close. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to learn about this center. I had no idea it existed. Y'all in Oregon have some special stuff going on. And there's something really, really, really special about this fair, unlike any other place that I've been. There's truly, truly fair magic here. And I know that that magic is in all of us. It's in the land, it's in these trees. I get to be under that canopy first thing in the morning. It's the best way to start my day. And start with breath, and we had a beautiful morning with Jaya and singing and chanting. And now we get to learn more about all kinds of amazing offerings here. We're going to learn about ethnobotanicals and accessibility and awareness of with the Edelic Center. All right, and I'm going to hand this mic over. They're going to actually share much, much more with us. They have the whole program set up, so I'm going to let go of the mic and Miss Rachel. And also I was going to say afterwards, too, they're going to have a whole bunch of information at the table out front. So please be sure to check that out. And I'm sure they're happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you. Whoops. Can we give them a warm welcome, please? Edelic Center.
Hi, everyone. So my name's Rachel. I'm co-founder of Edelic. And today we are going to be sharing about psychedelic integration. And before we get into that, I just would like to invite James up here. He's also a co-founder of Edelic, and he's just going to give you a brief intro as to what we do. James?
Hi, everybody. My name is James, and I am one of the co-founders of Edelic. And I'll try to keep the introduction very short. Our goal since 2015 has been to provide an extremely comprehensive overview of the field of psychedelics. This includes healing, psychology, science, anthropology, community, and also the general political aspect of all of this work as well. Fast forward 10 years later, and we are very close to seeing federal legalization of psilocybin, and we already have achieved state legalization of psilocybin as well. So with that comes the important part of, once we have our rights, how do we integrate those rights into our daily lives? And we have two beautiful speakers here today that are going to help guide us on that journey.
All right, so psychedelics, have the opportunity to take us deep within ourselves, but then what do we do with that, right? All these teachings, all these gems of wisdom that come, and one of our responsibilities is to take those and integrate them in and ground them. And so today we have Stephanie Alder, and she is a psychedelic life coach, helping people who are on the path or getting on the path to bring any aspect of their lives into greater alignment with self, purpose, health, and well-being. She loves empowering people to get themselves unstuck, live authentically, and heal, and she is on the board of directors of Edelic, and she also teaches integration with subtle winds. And Stephanie, right there.
Hello. Okay, so you can't hear me? All right, perfect. Nice to see you all. Happy fair.
Next we have Aislinn. Aislinn Blair is a psychedelic doula, visionary, and multimedia artist by trade. She is Edelic's integration facilitator, and we offer those bi-weekly at our center. She experienced a profound transformation herself. Aislinn's intentional and sacred relationship with plant medicines is the foundation that her practice and offerings are built upon. With a trauma-informed lens and through compassionate inquiry and internal family systems frameworks, Aislinn supports folks moving through preparation, navigation, and integration of psychedelic experiences. Evelyn weaves mindfulness, embodiment, and elemental alchemy into the rituals and ceremonies she offers. She empowers folks to discover and deepen their own practices in ways that resonate with their unique rhythms and sacred truth. Thank you, Evelyn. Go ahead.
So just to get us started today, since there's a lot going on out there and a lot going on in here, as a result, we thought it would be a great idea just to take a moment to ground into our bodies and let our minds settle a little bit. So maybe just take this time to find a nice position in your body. Feel yourself grounding or rooting into whatever surface is supporting you. And start to tune into your breath. Choose exactly what it is that you want to breathe in right now. And exactly what it is that you'd like to let go of as you breathe out. Take 3 breaths in that space. Knowing that you know exactly what it is that you need in this moment. And then one more deep breath. Bring yourself back to this space. And back to talk about integration with us. Wonderful. So what is psychedelic integration? This can be a new word for some of us, but a completely familiar word for others. But generally what we're talking about when we're talking about integration is the process of bringing our insights, our experiences, our sensations, our emotions, anything that we perceive through any of our senses during a psychedelic journey, and making that something that brings us insight, value, improves our lives, improves the way we experience our mind and our bodies, and bringing all of that into a space where we can utilize that on a daily basis. Sometimes that means moving through a challenging emotion, something from our past. Sometimes it means stepping more fully into our authentic selves. But that's a process of using different techniques and patterns to move ourselves into that space.
Yeah, I just like the meaning of the word, right? Integrate, to make whole, to take the different parts and weave them together, where they're in relationship, where they're in dialogue, where they're understood and acknowledged. There are some parts that we've had to disconnect from. There's people who have had severe trauma that they've actually had to disconnect from the ecosystem we live in, right? The earth, the plant beings, the animal beings. Thank you. And so not only are we reconnecting to the parts of ourselves, we're reconnecting to each other, we're reconnecting to the world we live in, to nature, to our family systems, to our lineage.
And ultimately what we're doing is making an entire life, an entire lifestyle for ourselves that's sustainable in all of these different aspects. And that involves a lot of reinforcing daily practices, examining our mindsets, and really doing the deep work when we're not journeying in our daily lives to make sure that the wonderful experiences we have with psychedelics don't just become really fancy dreams. There's one other thing that's really important is to note that sometimes psychedelic experiences are challenging, and sometimes they're these glorious, mysterious, beautiful things full of love, right? But sometimes they're also very, very challenging. And when we have a challenging experience with psychedelics, that's when it's like very, very crucial that we take the time to integrate, because we can always learn something really profound about the nature of ourselves, the nature of the world that we're living in, our experiences, or how things have marked us in the past when we do have those challenging experiences. So if that ever does happen to you, I would definitely encourage taking some extra time to really sink into finding some meaning making, maybe finding some support in that process, and not just turning away from the experience because it happened to be challenging.
Yeah, and something that stands out to me, that in the West here, we don't have ritual built into our culture. We have to seek it and create it. It's not something that's just offered in our daily lives. And so that is almost the integration, right? How often are we singing? How often are we moving our bodies and dancing with the earth and moving the energy? How often are we touching each other and holding ourselves? It's something we're learning culturally right now, how to bring those processes forward into daily life. In some ways it feels like for me, I've experienced a lot of grief in that as I've come to realize how important those rituals have been, and the grieving ritual even, right, of what's missing in our culture.
Yeah, exactly. Wonderful. So how do you integrate, right? So we can tell you all about why it's important and what it is, but without telling you how to do it, it's a little bit thin, right? The integration process starts when we prepare for our psychedelic journey, right? It starts with setting an intention for what it is we want to sit with. What do we want to call into our mind, to our space, to our hearts? What's the intention with which we're taking this experience, right? These aren't small things to experience in this life, and we're very blessed when we get to have these experiences. So really grounding into gratitude for just the possibility is something it's nice to do in that space. Then as we think about where and with whom we're going to have these experiences, we can set that up so that we can give ourselves a more fulfilling experience, an experience more likely to align with our intentions. We can bring special objects to the space with us, things that will help us through the integration process later on, because all of those elements can be used to remind ourselves of the experience that we had, which is something that helps us get a lot more out of the experience itself, because we've set it up from the beginning to have a really cohesive, fluid thing. We've given ourselves grounding tools if we start to have a challenging experience. We've given ourselves things that we want to think about, maybe memory objects or soothing objects or just inspiring objects. And then as we choose those things and we link them with the intention that we have for the experience, it helps us move through that entire experience in the moment. But then also, once we go forward to integrate that experience after the fact, we can turn back to the elements that we created in our set and setting, which is what I'm describing now, to help us re-jog our memories and have those experiences again, and to be able to take all of that wisdom with us.
And although we're giving you kind of a pragmatic, linear description of the process is messy. Process unfolds. And so it's a returning again and again to the intention. So yes, preparation, and then the navigation itself, the ability to unfold in the process in real time. And sometimes we access the skills we've been learning during preparation, and sometimes we don't. And that's information too. We're collecting data. We are witnessing ourselves in the current state of consciousness that we're operating in. And that can be really challenging to witness in ourselves. Like, I know for me, I've struggled to access the embodiment practice in my psychedelic journey. And there's times where I'm dissociating, but I'm looking at it. I'm witnessing myself be so disconnected, and that is information for the next part of my process, right? Which is the remembering what's happening during the psychedelic journey. What did I experience? What did dissociation feel like? It felt like a vortex of nothingness. It felt like numbness, right? Oh, how does that connect to my daily life? Am I walking around in these ways? Is dissociation a part of my trauma story? Is this something that I've had to use for survival? Okay, let me just carry that with me in the next part of my integration, and I might have to pursue practices that help me to ground, to be more embodied.
And as we go through these practices that she's referring to, these are things that start to come into our daily lives. So if we're examining what it feels like to dissociate when we're on a psychedelic journey, then we might be able to more readily recognize that we're doing that in the rest of our life. So when we have a bit more distance and a bit more space to observe the self, observe the mind, observe the way that we're moving through various spaces, we can have so many more insights into how it is that we're living all the rest of the time. So that's one of those sort of like self-reflective pieces that we try to cultivate as we move through experiencing our minds and our bodies in different states. Because all of those different states, when you compare them to each other, they often give you deeper insights as well.
So after we've remembered, then there's this expression, right? And that can come in many formats. It can be through song, it can be through a creative, artistic practice, it can be through just sharing with a friend what the experience was like for you. It can be movement, it can be attuning and kind of forming relationships with plant allies that can be supportive for us. It can be, there's a myriad of ways to express. There's not a right way, and just finding what is alive in us, what's the feeling, and how do we make sense of it? What color is it? What texture is it? Is it high? Is it low? Is it earthy? Is it cosmic? How do we kind of bring that from the inner to the outer so that we can see it outside of ourselves, and then be with it?
Sometimes even sitting and contemplating these things is a way of expressing it too. So the more you sit with the experience, the more that you have come up for you over time, the insights start to accumulate. Sometimes it might be a couple weeks before you have a realization, and just that realization is then something that goes on to inform your expressions in other areas as well. Next we talk about connecting. There's a few different ways to connect as an integrative process. You can connect to community, you can connect to self, you can connect to earth or plants or physical movement, any of these sorts of things. But one of the things that's really important to me personally is connecting with community, because when you are having some of these very interesting, beautiful, privileged experiences, sharing those with people who understand them is a great way to gain continued insights. When you tell someone else what you've experienced, when they tell you what they've experienced, when you support somebody else, when they support you, when you work together on like the work, like the mental, spiritual, emotional work that we all do, there's a connecting process there that helps you deepen into it. And over time, this is something that supports all of us on our journeys. So social connecting with people and community is something that I personally really value.
Yeah, to second that, I really appreciate Edelic offering that space. There are integration circles bi-weekly, and to be in a room with other people who are sharing in their lived experience of this journey, not only is it important that we share it, but listening to someone else's journey, I see myself. I get that reflection of, oh, you carry that alone story. Oh, you've been walking in this burden of aloneness. I carry that too, right? And in hearing you, I hear myself. I feel less alone. I feel heard just by hearing you. So yeah, community and expressing and listening and sharing.
Yeah. Also connecting insights from our experiences in different areas of our life. Sometimes we might find that in one particular relationship we behave in one particular way. That's the only way that we're aware of that behavior. But then if we look for it in our relationship with ourselves, in our relationship to our work, in different relationships that we have, we may find that the exact same element or the exact same behavior shows up in all of these different places. So as we go and we look for the connections between different things in our own personality, in our own world, in our own experience, that's just another way to have ongoing, deepening insights into the nature of our mind, our relationship to our body, what's going on in our life, and anything that might be helpful to help us move into a more actualized and full life in the future. It's really a long path, right? Like these things aren't, you don't take one psychedelic journey and have like, you know, everything happen for you in that day. It's a process, it's a path.
And just to deepen on that connection piece too, like we're connecting to our authentic self. So as we kind of examine the patterns that we're living in, we might recognize that these are inherited, they are cultural conditioning, they are kind of parts that have had to survive. And as we softly gaze at them, right, with just curiosity, we can start to see, oh, there's a tender need underneath it all that's driving the behavior. So for me, looking at like, I need to be heard, I need to be seen. We all have that need. But what behavior do I have that maybe is actually working against me? to get that need met. And interrupting someone, right? I had that pattern for a long time, interrupting. And now that I know, like, oh, underneath that is that I just really want to be heard. I can find new tools and people who can meet me in that space and find the vulnerability and ask for that, right? Would you be willing to witness me right now? I'm having this experience and I really need to be heard, right? Asking permission for that from others. So connecting to self, connecting to others in authenticity and consent, right? In consensual ways where there's a ability to have more intimacy and depth in those dynamics because we're both agreeing to it and we're being explicit about how we want to interact.
I have 2 more things I want to share,
Yeah.
and then we'll go into our exercise. That's cool. And then if you go, I have 4 more things to share too, of course. What I really want to point out from what Edelic was sharing is the ability to choose, right? If you notice a pattern, a behavior, a thought, a mood, a space that you get yourself into, psychedelics help you be able to choose whether to keep that or evolve that, because they let you see it more clearly for what it is and see what's underneath it, see the pattern that supports it. And when we have this amount of knowledge and learning about ourselves, then we can more consciously choose exactly who we want to be. And then when we set up our practices and we set up the way we want to work with our mind in the future, we can make that choice in every moment of every day to be exactly who it is we want to be alignment with our real selves. The last idea I wanted to share is that the really beautiful thing and surprising thing about psychedelics is that it makes it so that we can access the subconscious content of our mind more readily and more easily. So the things that we are confronting are oftentimes really just us. So we don't need to be afraid of them, right? Like we can understand that it's all a deepening place of self-knowledge and growth and insight that's coming directly from who we are. And as we cultivate an attitude of curiosity about ourselves, our subconscious, and the world that we live in, that's only a place for continuing growth.
And these plants are so generous. They give us the resource to be able to do that. Yeah, I think a lot of times people will come into an experience, I don't know, I'm afraid. And, to get a little sciencey, it's like, okay, you're going to have increased oxytocin. You're going to have all these hormones that are flooding you, that are like shutting down the fear parts of the brain, and you're going to have access to something that you don't ordinarily have access to, and that's their gift.
Yes, awesome. Are we ready to move into, or should we ask people how they integrate and then do some integrating ourselves?
I like that.
Sure. So all sorts of experiences need to be integrated, not just psychedelic experiences. If you have like a really big thing happen in your life, like going to this amazing festival and seeing all these beautiful people at fair, you might need to integrate that experience as well. But let's just see if anyone here has any favorite integration activities, techniques, or things they love to do to bring experiences into their lives.
Oh boy, talking to people you don't know, seeing them the first time and closing your eyes and saying, I want to speak to them so that I can know how to speak to people without any of the presuppositions or prejudgment. So first day of fair, mellow yellow, my normal calm state, but somewhat avoidant, right? But second day, standing in one place, just looking everybody in the eyes. Standing in one place and seeing how long passersby can maintain eye contact. Remembering that in school there was no ability to make the eye contact, but learning or doing this is teaching me that giving attention to others is a foundation of love. Before we can love anything, we witness it. It is there because we love it. And eye contact with another human being opens up that magic. And through just standing for maybe a couple hours in one space and just relentlessly knowing I will see all of you for 2 days and maybe not again until next year, just to see how many people feel that heart connection. And I was very, very pleased to find that on this day, making eye contact and speaking with people, meeting people, making connections, and just talking to anybody without any fear of background or difference of opinion has been so effortless that I find myself a completely different human being. So that integration of just making eye contact with as many people as possible for as long as possible has been a primary integration
Awesome.
tactic.
Yeah, eye contact, eye gazing, great. Awesome tradition of that, thank you. Any other integration techniques that people love?
I'm going to say please hold the mic closer to your mouth, just because it's a lot of other sounds we're competing with.
Something that I really like to do after, any sort of life thing is I see pictures in my head. So I'll have like a piece of paper and I'll just use like crayons and markers and colored pencils to like write little like kind of affirmations or words of integration for what just happened, and then kind of like just make a picture of the whole experience so I can like see it right in front of me. That's really helpful for me.
Beautiful.
I'm in the art camp as well. I had a really beautiful experience with watercolor because it's really, really flowy. And I'm normally scared of watercolor, but it's been really useful to be able to see the water flowing into paint and have that be a process to process what's happening inside and to get outside. And I had this experience where I was painting this tree with branches and roots, and they were all weaving into each other. And every time I got to a place and I thought, oh, I made a mistake, this went right, oh, it's all wrong, I would leave it and I'd go to another place and then I'd say, oh no, I made a mistake, okay, I'm going to ignore it, I'm going to go over here. And by the end, it was all how it was meant to be. It was all connecting in beautiful ways I couldn't have done if I was trying to plan it myself. So watercolor is now my go-to for any process because of its flowiness.
Beautiful.
For me, is trying to bring that experience from the altered state of mind to the time when I'm not in that state, and really consciously try to get there again just by myself, to be thinking about it and try to re-experience it from within.
I haven't really thought this out, but I've been trying to apply the things that I hear to my... Oh, sorry. Apply the things that have been experienced to my reality, and how it is almost like lessons being taught to me, and comparing the things that I've seen and how they relate to things that are currently going on in my life, and the parallels that it's drawing and the connection. It's hard to put into words, but it's actually been kind of making a lot of sense to me and just coming together. I mean, just thinking about it, really just looking at it from all angles, and it's kind of waking me up to a lot of interesting things.
Thank you. Maybe one more, two more?
Anyone use any body practices? Any just sort of show of hands, even any like movement? Yeah, I like movement practices a lot.
Speaking directly to psychedelic experience, when I'm having that experience, there are certain visions that come to mind, certain feelings that I have, and in reflection and integration, I reflect back on those signposts, and when it comes to mind, I really think deeply in reflection of those moments. Something that comes to mind just recently in the psychedelic experience, I was calling in my connection with nature, with the land that I was on. And as that happened, this eagle flew right over my head. And there's been a couple times since then where I've seen an eagle or a hawk, and it brought me back into that moment and that feeling of remembrance in my body. And so being aware of those signposts, those little visions that tie that consciousness in that moment and those feelings that are so deep and rich to my normal waking consciousness, to remind me of that connection. And that's a big part of my integration.
Wonderful.
And each time we do that, the neural pathway is formed and easier to access.
Yeah, sure. We'll just name off a couple other ways that other techniques you can cultivate. And again, remember that you're ideally building these things into your life on a daily basis, right? So, or close to daily basis. We can also do things like writing, we can play music, we can listen to music that reminds us of the journey that we've just taken, or music that just connects us to ourselves in some way. We can take care of our bodies with exercise or healthy food. We can spend time in nature. What else you got? All sorts of ways to integrate.
Rituals are very important. Compassion practices, empathy practices, accountability systems for our commitments that we're making. Breath work, hiking, camping, being in nature, journaling, meditation, mindfulness, dream journals, yoga, inner child work. I think that's a big one that comes up for folks. Sometimes it's like depending on what we're what's coming forward, right? Like I'm thinking about, for me, I remember when I was so closed off because I was protecting all the time, and I really wanted to have more generosity flowing in my life. And ironically, placing myself in a position of service, right, was the thing that made me more generous. Even though I didn't feel like at the time I had access to resources to be generous, I stepped forward into it and it fed me. So prayer, intention setting, mantra work, astrology, shadow work, gratitude practices. Another one that I see this often, asking for help. Very challenging for many people.
And I'm also a proponent of doing nothing, especially after big experiences. So all the things we've named, or most of them, are these active things, like get out there and like move your body and like make yourself good food and like make a song. It's very active, right? But just the time to let everything settle and be very still and be mindful and noticing of what is moving through you. That's an important skill to cultivate for when you are journeying. It's an important skill to cultivate when you're not journeying. But really what's important there is seeing what bubbles through your mind. Like what messages come to you just in that place of space and stillness. This also helps us to access our intuition, because intuition tends to speak to us when we aren't actively thinking or actively doing. So as we clear the pathways for something like intuition, and then we clear the space for ourselves to speak to ourselves, we can hear these messages more clearly. So yes, all the practices, but yes, all the stillness and all the doing nothing as well. Let's do that.
Yeah. Curious if anyone has any questions at this point before we get into a integration practice.
Doing my inner Oprah. Thank you very much.
So, as you were going, actually, as this gentleman was mentioning, you know, the signposts, right? I recognize over this last year, I built a lot of signposts, and as the summer months have come in and things have fallen out of practice a little bit, as Maya has thickened, I found, I guess my question is about disintegration. I when falling out of practice with some of these key things that really need work done, you know, as you go through harder times and things fall out of practice, and then things get easier again and they remain out of practice, I've witnessed this just absolute admonishment and pain at what feels like disintegration, which is going back into the old ways of thinking, but the knowledge doesn't go away once you integrate certain practices and you know what the truth is, but there's something around you, some sort of trauma stimulant or something that is kicking in the old ways of thinking or feeling or behaving, and you know, just sitting with the pain and trying to rebuild back up that pathway again through forgiveness and self-compassion when it feels like it is almost more painful, like you're going back through it again the first time, but over a longer, I feel like I'm going over it a longer stretch, right? And so I know it all comes in seasons and there's ups and downs with it, but do you have anything to say about the, like, I guess the concept of disintegration or that pain of going back and forth and finding steadiness and stability with that integration?
I just have a short answer because I feel like in your question you also gave an answer, and I echo that, which is that process of self-compassion, right? Is that softness, because I think one thing I and many of us are moving through is the decolonizing the psyche, is the undoing of capitalism, the undoing of oppression, right? The undoing of shame, the undoing, and this is the long game. And so as we default into those old patterns, for me it has not worked to push harder, to try harder, to judge myself, right? And so I feel like that practice you're naming of softness, I'm in this pain again, I'm here, right? And the asking for help, and the kind of the practices we named, it's a return again and again and again. It's not necessarily an arrival, right? And I do feel like over time, the commitment to the practices help the outcome be more available, right? But it's, I can speak for myself, I still, again and again and again, go back to those places, but it's different because it's the spiral, right? It's not the linear, it's like I'm here, but it's a little bit different this time. How is it different? What can I see differently about this part of the process? And integrate that and be with that.
Thank you. One thing I'd like to add onto that, I was recently dealing with the same situation and found myself, you know, trying to figure out how never to have to do that again. And what worked for me is creating a new structure, a new framework in my life that prevents me from going back to the old ways, the suffering and the lessons that I've learned a lot in my life, and I'm done learning those lessons. So having an accountability buddy for me, and just, you know, making a change to where if you're done learning the lesson, move on.
Yeah, that sounds like really accessing your ability to consciously choose what you want for yourself.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a moment by moment process.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard work. It's important hard work.
And I want to name it's harder for some than others, right?
Yeah.
Due to privilege, due to certain oppression, due to the bodies we're in, right? And so agency is accessible to many people, and it's not for others. And so, again, that kindness to ourselves and for others, knowing that they can't just choose sometimes. Yeah.
Thanks.
Actually, we have 7 minutes, so is our actual activity now? Okay, yeah, great. Okay, so we're going to run you through a couple nice ways to integrate any experience, psychedelic or not. We're going to start with some somatic practices, so let's stand up. So, we're talking about using the body here. First, I would like to invite you just to a gentle bounce. Just bending in the knees, feeling your buoyancy, noticing where your center of gravity might take you. Let your arms go. See how your arms will go with it. Maybe some side-to-side movement or some twisting if that feels good in your body. And as you bounce, take a deep breath in, and we're going to hum on the out breath. This helps to stimulate the vagus nerve, so hum. And you might time that with your bounce. Hum. And you might speed your bounce up if it feels good to you. Hum. And see where that takes you. Feel into that. Where does the energy move as you bounce? Shift feet, maybe. Move your center of gravity.
Not hearing any humming.
Yes, hum louder. Yeah, feel the vibration through your body. Now give yourself some taps. I actually see some people doing it already. And a really cool one here is if you cross your arms over like this and you tap on each side, this starts to stimulate your nerves in each side of your body alternatingly. Yeah, cool. So now we're gonna actually really shake. Have you ever seen an animal get chased by another animal? Like chased by, like your cat gets chased by your dog or something? Your cat will like shake itself off once it's like not afraid anymore. So that's why we like to shake our body around with energy. So here you go. Shake. Shake the arms, the legs, the hips, the head, in every direction and every direction. Shake high, shake low. Hands up in the air, shake high. And if you can shake and bounce and jump at the same time, you might feel even extra integrated. Bring it all back into center. Take a deep breath. And now Isla will lead us in a song.
But one of the things I've continuously had to integrate is the self-critic. The one that berates, the perfectionist, the one that thinks I should. And this song was shared with me. It's by Barbara McAfee. And it's a mantra song, so it's easy to access. And as I'm singing it, I'm receiving it. I'm both generating and receiving, generating and receiving. And there's certain parts that need to receive it. There's my inner child parts that want to believe this. And there's these other parts that deeply believe and know this is true. So we'll start, I want to name, a lot of us have a constriction here. We struggle to access the language center of the brain when we've been through trauma. And so, no, you're not alone in that. So maybe just starting with a, like make it ugly. The song doesn't have to be pretty. That's not why we're doing it. It's not a performance. It's a prayer. It's an affirmation. So I'm going to sing it kind of ugly the first time, just to give permission, right? I will believe the truth about myself, no matter how beautiful it is. I will believe the truth about myself, no matter how beautiful it is. I will believe the truth about myself, no matter how beautiful it is.
about myself. No matter how beautiful it is, I will believe the truth about myself. No matter how beautiful it is, I will believe the truth about myself. No matter how beautiful it is, I will believe the truth about myself. No matter how beautiful it is, I will believe the truth about myself. No matter how beautiful I am, I will believe the truth about myself. No matter how beautiful I am, I will believe the truth about myself. No matter how beautiful we are, I will believe the truth about myself. No matter how beautiful we are, I will believe the truth about myself. No matter how beautiful we are, no matter how beautiful we are.
Thank you so much for being here at Edelic Center for Ethnobotanical Services. Don't forget that they have a table right at the end there. He's waving his hand. Go and visit, learn some more. Definitely share the information, and thank you for this discussion. Thank you for the awareness. Thank you for being available. And hopefully this will spread beyond Oregon. I'm a little jealous. I live in Washington and I think we're progressive, but we're trying to catch up to y'all. Truth be told. So.